Hello, I'm Leah. I'd like to welcome you to Balderton's 10-minute ministry. We're a few days on from International Women's Day and a few days before Mothering Sunday, so I want to focus on prayer for women based on resources from World Vision and the Global Women's Project. I want to begin by reading a short extract from the first chapter of Exodus. Then the king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, one of whom was named Shiphrah and the other Puah, when you serve as midwives to the Hebrew women and see them upon the birth stool, if it is a son, you shall kill him, but if it is a daughter, she shall live. But the midwives feared God and did not do as the king of Egypt commanded them, but let the male children live. So the king of Egypt called the midwives and said to them, why have you done this, and let the male children live? The midwives said to Pharaoh, because the Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women, for they are vigorous and are delivered before the midwife comes to them. So God dealt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and grew very strong. And because the midwives feared God, he gave them families. Then Pharaoh commanded all his people, every son that is born to the Hebrews you shall cast into the Nile, but you shall let every daughter live. During these difficult times, we're called not only to be a voice for the voiceless, but must recognise and hear the voices that have been silenced throughout time, due to preconceptions on gender, economic and racial oppression, as well as the fact that we simply don't hear the Bible stories that highlight the strength of women. And we've failed to be critical of those stories that speak of violence and oppression towards women. Let us begin in prayer. Mother God, whose wisdom created us, whose strength sustains us, whose compassion guides us, crack us open this day. Crack open our ears so we may hear the words of our sisters from across space and across time. Crack open our eyes so we may see the places our lives connect. Crack open our hearts so the redeeming power of Christ may renew our relationships with those we may never meet. Crack open our lives so you may infuse us fully with your passion and grace. Mother God, who gave birth to us through the moulding and forming of the earth, you breathed life into our lungs and called us good. You made us a people to dwell together. But we confess something happened. We have distanced ourselves from your love. We've built walls between each other. What we don't see, we don't love. And what we don't love, we're fearful of. In your generous diversity, loving God, we've formed divisions. Divisions made deeper by money, opportunity, violence, and arrogance. We don't want to hear the stories of those less fortunate than us, because it hurts. We don't want to see the faces of our sisters and brothers who are hurting, because we'll feel responsible. We don't want to feel responsibility, because we'll feel the need to change. And so often, we don't want to change. But you call us to be transformed. You call for us to open our eyes and see ourselves in each living and breathing thing on earth. We know we can't change the entire world in our lifetime, but help us to see how we can transform ourselves so that the world might come one small step to realising your love. God hears our cries and longs to help us in our struggle. God hears our confessions and forgives us. May we take God's desire for transformation seriously and find ways to respond to God's forgiveness with acts of love and faith. Amen. I don't know how many times we've said to somebody, "You're not listening, are you?" We're talking to them and we can see they're distracted by everything, by their phone, by what they were doing before we began speaking, by their own thoughts, by everything that they consider important. And we feel that we're not heard. And it can just be that the other person is so happy to have someone to talk to themselves that they're desperate to say everything that is on their own mind. And it's a very old cliched statement that we're given 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. And that is that we should listen far, far more than we speak. It's difficult during these challenging times. And who would have imagined a year ago that we'd still be saying the same thing now? That we can't meet together with our friends and family. We can't have conversations in the same way that we did a year ago. When we pick up the phone, when we use FaceTime, when we use Zoom, however we're communicating at the moment, it's not the same as being there with someone. You can't share the same gestures. You can't look for facial expressions. You can't hug someone. For us, though, we're still incredibly privileged. We have the opportunity to communicate, to speak out, to share. The oppression that we face as women within Britain is much less than in many parts of the world. Economically, we're still probably paid less. We still feel and face the threats of domestic violence. But we don't face the problems that are faced in many parts of the world, where there is no freedom to access education, medical care, simply even to leave our own homes without permission, simply even to own our own homes. At this point in the year, we stop and honour women. And by honouring women, we of course honour everyone. Statistically, helping women is much more likely to improve the livelihood of everyone around them. As women most often have the biggest say in providing care for young people. What we do for one woman, we do for everyone. Let us close in prayer. Go now with your ears open. Go to listen and learn the ways that God speaks through others, without regard for time or space, colour or creed. Go now in peace. Amen.